Well, hello and welcome to the fraud prevention session of the 2023 IRO Summit. My name is Kent Simpson. I am the industry principal for Yardi Systems Screening and Fraud Solutions. Okay, this no more risky business session that we're going to do here. A couple things just to be thinking about as we get started. Right, fraud in multifamily is more common than people realize, and consequences can be extremely costly. So if you think about just one fraudster slipping through the cracks, that can lead to significant waste of time, money, and even damage your reputation. So in this session, we're going to share data on fraud, showcase real-world examples to help you understand its impact. I also want you to learn valuable insights on identifying vulnerabilities and then implementing effective verification processes to safeguard against fraud on multiple levels. So what do we want to learn? Well, what we want to learn is we want to get insight into the complex tactics used by fraudsters and how to, guard against, understand the prevalence of fraud and the astounding number of fake IDs, income documents that get presented during the application process, and then assess the risk of fraud to your organization and understand what risk you may have that you can do something about here. So let's talk about this in the order that you see here. First, what's happening right now in the world of fraud? How significant is it? That's number one. Number two, let's talk through current best practices for dealing with and mitigating a lot of this type of fraud. And finally, let's finish up by discussing what's on the horizon in dealing with fraud at the next level, right? Which isn't stuff everybody's done to think about, but we really need to be. Okay, so a little historical context, and maybe we'll just call it the COVID effect. We all know that there was fraud before COVID ever happened. Now, during COVID, what happened, right? Every prospect became anonymous and no leasing staff in the office. The negative effect of that, or one of them, was that creative sneakiness, right, for lack of a better way of saying it, really became a lot more sophisticated. The braveness, the brazenness of fraudsters, of prospects, as well as opportunistic criminals finding a way to monetize the situation or monetize the landscape. That really ratcheted way up. So as you look at these numbers, realizing that fraud types like IDs, income are notable at between 1 to 10%, it's not all doom and gloom, right? You still have 80+% of prospects that are still the ones that you do want to rent to. So we're solving problems for a minority of people that cause the majority of your pain, of your financial pain. So what kind of fraud is being attempted or committed? Well, it's several things really. In one lane, you got fraudsters trying to apply as someone else or with a synthetic identity, right? So maybe my name, your social security number, and somebody else's address. They're all real data sources. It's just not for one person, obviously. In another lane that's picked up considerable steam over the past 3 years is that of fake IDs and income sources and documents. So, and these images that you're seeing here, they sadly may look familiar to you. Fake IDs, ability to purchase fake pay stub kits, etc. And these aren't things that are on the dark web, but rather, common places like Facebook Marketplace, which you're seeing here. Okay, so what's the objective? What are we trying to achieve? Well, simply, are you who you claim to be, the prospect? Can you pay your rent? And do you have a sustainable track record for doing that? That's when you boil it down, that's what we want to try to figure out. Now, if that is what we're trying to solve for, then what fraud mitigation techniques are available today that can be utilized partially or in some? Well, let's run through what you're seeing here. First, identity verification. And under the identity verification umbrella, the bullet points that you're seeing here, and we'll start with the first one. So some type of using some type of government issued ID and a biometric, a selfie, right, where you can do comparisons, um, driver's licenses, passports from just about any country in the world, other government issued IDs. This is a wonderful way to get at this. So there's huge benefit. The drawback would be it requires smartphones and tablets, and not everybody's great at taking pictures, right? So they're not complex, a lot of the tools that are out there, but that would be one of the drawbacks to that. But the benefits are very high. What credit bureaus can do for you already, uh, whether you're using a screening organization or you're going directly to a credit bureau to get consumer information that way on their credit related stuff. There are alerts, these things that are called checkpoint messages, that are a lot of times things you can't take adverse action on, but you really want to know about them. So maybe there's an alert about a social security number belonging to a deceased person, or the first three digits are out of sequence, or something like that. Things that are legitimate checkpoint messages or alerts, and you want to know about them. That's the upside. They are there. The downside can be if you're not using a screening company that puts those front and center at the top of the report, or you're wading through the report trying to find them. If you go directly to the bureau, they may be difficult to find or kind of ambiguous. So pros and cons to that, but that type of checkpoint messaging is available. And then the other thing too is accessing a bank to prove that you really have one or that you are really you. Because if I've gone through the trouble and the rigor of successfully verifying that I have a bank, then I'm most likely me. So high confidence here. But real quick, we're not doing income verification. I'm just saying bank account linkage to confirm that I have an account. And if it was good enough for, say, chase.com, it should be good enough for you. So these are the things that can be done around the lines of identity fraud and mitigating that stuff. Well, what about fraud on the income side of things? Well, again, multiple layers for this too. So really good news. Document verification, whether that's I have my paycheck, a bank statement, maybe a W-2, something like that. If we're all earning income, we have some way of proving it with that type of document. So that's a very good way to do it. The drawback is the friction involved in all of that. Not everybody's going to put up with the hassle on the prospect side, providing one or multiple documents to vet themselves for you or me. They may not remember their ADP login or whoever to try to remember on how to go find their pay stub. So pros and cons on that. The payroll database, another fantastic source for this as a way to solve. There are sources like the work number and others that are out there. The great thing about those is when there are records, they're instant. There's no friction. The prospect doesn't get asked to do anything, neither does your leasing agent or you. And then there's a high confidence here because of non-fraud, because the document is coming from the employer to the database. So nobody's doing any fraud here. The drawback is not every employer in the country is furnishing records here, but the 50% coverage may or may not sound good to you. I would encourage you to take that as a very high number, a great way to get that stuff vetted out. And then a third way is payroll account linking. Being able to get pay stubs directly from the source, like an ADP and others like them. The only drawback to that might be it's not taking into account people that may get paid in unusual ways, your trust fund babies and things like that, where it's more about assets than income. But then the last one has really picked up the most popularity and steam in the last few years, and that's automation out of banks. Getting into the bank, making your deposit information available so that you can know exactly what the earned income is. So these are ways to get at the fraud on the income side. So you got the ID measures that we talked about, now the income measures that we talked about. So when you layer all these in together, that gets pretty holistic in the solve, right? Okay. So, as you can see, there are numerous ways to do this. One other comment I just want to make before we, start to kind of circle the wagon and bring it home. As much as you can do to catch fraud with practices like these, there is even better news. And that is the deterrent factor in all of this. It's the same concept as having a security sign in the front yard of your home, right? So for all of the fraud that can be caught, more than twice as much will be deterred. So think about that. That's a pretty big number, right? So you can do these things, and you can do these things upstream from your typical screening process where you do credit and criminal. And so if you think about doing some of these things, you can handle these and screen a cleaner set of people in some cases. So what we're talking about here is measurements that can be automated, placed into applicant leasing workflows. And remember, the simple act of presenting such things to applicants is going to give pause to potential fraudsters. So, and fraudsters talk amongst themselves. We all know this. Hey man, you should apply here. This place where I got a lease doesn't do any real fraud detection. That's not really the message you want on the street, right? But when you put these tools in place, what you can get them to begin to say, and really in pretty short order, is, hey man, instead of that, hey man, this place is serious about fraud prevention, so you might as well apply somewhere else. I did. So just that's the kind of stuff that you do want out there. That's the word you want on the street. That's the word you want going on in those fraud networks, right? So they go away from targeting your property. And then for your legit prospects, the vast majority, as we said, they're going to appreciate, right, that peace of mind that comes with knowing that your community takes this stuff seriously, fosters a safer place to live. And from there, you get that other vortex that you want where they tell their friends, you get that word on the street that you do want, and you get a more reliable applicant pool. So, a lot of good positive stuff that you want there just by having these things in place and deterring a lot of what you don't want. Okay, well, let's bring it home and kind of finish up here. What do we know? We know fraud is real, and fraudsters have definitely become more sophisticated. Tech solutions and automated ways to deliver them, make them available, are on the increase. Also, the deterrent factor, as we were just discussing, plays a really big role in solving for fraud. And then some level of fraud mitigation really does need to be part of your day-to-day operation. Okay. Well, thanks for joining me for this quick trip around how to handle some of this risky business. Hope it's been beneficial for you. If you'd like to get in on the conversation, you can do it right here. Again, thanks, and enjoy the rest of the IRO Summit.